Attention Commanders fans! This isn't a drill. There's a third-round wide receiver hidden in our roster that not even ESPN knows about, and he could explode in your faces in 72 hours. But that doesn't matter if we don't fix the disaster. On the offensive line, 50 sacks last year. Can you imagine Jaden Daniels in therapy come October? A rookie left tackle changes everything or destroys it. Wait! There's a nuclear bomb. Our iconic WR is 48 hours from becoming a free agent, and we haven't made an offer. If you think 2025 is our year, we have to survive July 1st. Subscribe now because this is going to get worse. Turn on notifications or you'll miss how to save the season. Listen up, because Luke McAffrey might be the player nobody expects, but everyone will be talking about this season. I'm going to tell you something many analysts don't want to admit. This guy has everything he needs to take off in 2025, and the evidence is there for anyone who wants to see it. First, let's talk genetics. This isn't just any Luke McAffrey. This is Christian McCaffrey's brother, the son of Ed McAffrey, who played 13 years in the NFL and won 3 Super Bowls. The McAffrey genetics aren't a coincidence. It's speed, it's instinct, it's that natural knack for finding spaces that you can't teach. But let me tell you something many don't know. When the Commanders picked him at pick 100 in last year's draft, it wasn't a consolation pick. Adam Peters had been tracking this kid since Rice. And when I say tracking, I mean he had scouts dedicated to watching every one of his moves. At Rice, McCaffrey didn't have the numbers you'd expect from a first-round receiver. But you know why? Because he was at Rice playing with quarterbacks that many of you don't even know. But when you analyze his route running, when you see his separation, when you watch how he handles physical contact, that's where you see the difference last. Season was exactly what we expected. Limited targets, gradual development, but when he got the chance, he produced. And here's the detail many overlooked. In the kick return game, McCaffrey averaged 24.3 yards per return. That's not a coincidence. That's speed, vision, and more importantly, that's the coaching staff's confidence. But here's where it gets interesting. During the offseason, something changed. Reports from OTAs and minicamps talk about a completely different player. More confident, faster in his decisions, more connected with Cliff Kingsbury's system. And I ask you, what happens when a player with that athleticism and those genetics has a full season to adapt to the system? Mike Jones from The Athletic, who knows his stuff and has connections inside the organization, named him the breakout candidate of the team. And take note of this. His connection with Jaden Daniels has improved significantly during the offseason. Program. We're talking about chemistry, about timing, about that connection that develops when a quarterback and a receiver are on the same page. Now, let's compare this with other second-year players in the league. Cooper Kupp had 62 receptions in his second year. Stephon Diggs had 84. These aren't unreachable numbers for McCaffrey, especially considering the leap receivers typically make between their first and second season. McCaffrey's numbers last year: 15 receptions, 170 yards, 1 touchdown. Modest, yes. But when you analyze the snaps, when you see the progression, when you watch how Kingsbury is using him, that's where you see the potential. In the slot, McCaffrey is running routes that perfectly complement what Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel are doing on the outside. And here's what has me excited. We have Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel as the main duo. Noah Brown as a deep threat and Jalen Lane as the explosive. But you know what? That takes the pressure off McCaffrey so he can develop naturally in the slot, find those spaces in the middle zone, become that escape valve Daniels needs. But let me tell you something else. The competition in the receiver room is going to be fierce. Dez Fitzpatrick is back, Mitchell Tinsley is trying to make the team, and several undrafted free agents are fighting for spots. That competition will bring out the best in McCaffrey, and I believe he's ready for that challenge. Fans waited all last season for a breakout performance from McCaffrey that never came. But I believe they won't have to wait much longer. This kid has put in the work, has the coaching staff's confidence, and more importantly, has the chemistry with our franchise quarterback. When you see McCaffrey in preseason, when you see how he moves on the field, you'll understand why I'm so convinced that 2025 is going to be his year. Now let's talk about something fundamental. something that can completely define Jaden Daniels' success and, by extension, the future of this franchise: protecting our quarterback. And Josh Conerly Jr. isn't just a pick, he's the answer we needed. When Adam Peters made this decision with the 29th pick, it wasn't by chance. It was a calculated move to secure the future of this franchise. And I'm going to explain why. First, let's look at the numbers that hurt. We allowed 50 sacks last season. 50. And it would have been more if Daniels and Marcus Mariota weren't so athletic to escape the pressure. But I ask you, how long can that last? How long can we rely on our rookie quarterback having to run for his life every Sunday? Look, when a quarterback is constantly worried about pressure, when he's looking over his shoulder, when he can't complete, his progression of reads, that's where good quarterbacks turn average and average quarterbacks turn bad. And we can't let that happen to Jaden Daniels. Conerly comes from Oregon. And when I say Oregon, I'm talking about a program that has produced and lead offensive linemen. Penny Sewell, Jake Hansen, these guys know how to develop talent on the offensive line. Conerly, 6'6", over 300 pounds. And here's the stat that has me excited. He only allowed 2 sacks in his last college season. 2 sacks in a whole season. That's not luck, that's technique, that's consistency, that's exactly what we need. But let's go deeper. At Oregon, Conerly played in a system that requires athletic offensive linemen, capable of blocking at the second level, capable of making pull blocks, capable of protecting in deep dropbacks. All those skills translate perfectly to what Cliff Kingsbury wants to do offensively. Peter said after the pick, it was an easy choice for us. Everybody was just really pumped to get him. And I think he was right. But here's what impresses me more. Peters continued saying, you see what an incredible athlete he is for his size. He's just 21, but very mature. He's like a true pro already. 21 years old. Let me repeat that. 21. We're talking about a kid who has the potential to play 12 to 15 years in this league, who can be the anchor of our offensive line throughout Daniels' entire career. That's the vision Peters had when he made this pick. But here's what's interesting, and something that might worry some. He's going to play right tackle, not left as he did at Oregon. Some might worry about that, but I don't. And you know why? Because Peters did his homework. He can play guard and he can play tackle, said Peters. He even practiced at right tackle at the Senior Bowl. That versatility is invaluable in the modern NFL. When you have a player who can play multiple positions, when you have someone who can adapt, that gives you roster flexibility, gives you options in case of injuries, gives you the ability to move pieces according to the game plan. Now, let's talk about the transition from left to right. Many think it's simple, but it's not. On the left side, you're protecting the quarterback's blind side, typically against right-handed pass rushers. On the right side, you're facing left-handed pass rushers, different techniques, different angles. But Conerly has shown in his workouts that he can make that transition. Let's compare this with what our rivals are doing. The Cowboys are relying on Tyron Smith, who, although good, is aging and has had injury problems. The Eagles have Jordan Mailata, who is good, but their right side has been inconsistent. The Giants are still the Giants on the offensive line, but we're building something special. Laramie Tunsil, 5-time Pro Bowler, on the left side. Conerly developing on the right. And in the middle, we have pieces that can compete. That's an offensive line that can protect, that can open holes, that can give Daniels the time to do what he does best. Peters was so convinced about Conerly that even with only 5 picks in the draft, he didn't want to trade down. If he was on the board, we weren't going to trade back, he said. It wasn't worth even risking missing on him. That's confidence, and I believe it was justified. But here's what excites me the most. Reports from OTAs and minicamps talk about a player who's quickly absorbing the playbook, who's competing from day one, who's showing that professional mentality that Peters mentioned. This kid isn't coming in to be a project. He's coming in to contribute immediately. And when I think about the future, when I think about Daniels with a clean pocket, when I think about Brian Robinson Jr. running behind an offensive line that can consistently open holes, that's where I see the potential of this offense. Conerly isn't just a pick. He's an investment in the future of this franchise. And now we come to the news that could define our entire season. The news that's keeping me up at night. The news that every Commanders fan should be following minute by minute. Terry McLaurin and his contract situation. And I'm going to tell you something straight up. The Commanders are playing with fire, and that fire has just intensified in a way that could blow up in our faces. Garrett Wilson just signed 4 years for $130 million with the Jets. $32.5 million per year. And you know what that means for us, right? It means that Terry McLaurin, our WR1, our star, the heart and soul of this offense, our most reliable connection, now has a new minimum for his negotiations. And that minimum just went up considerably. But let's dig deeper into this Wilson contract, because this directly affects McLaurin. Wilson, 25 years old, 2 All-Pro seasons, 95 receptions, 1,042 yards last season. Good numbers, yes? But let's compare them to McLaurin. 29 years old, more experience, more consistency, more leadership. McLaurin has been the only bright spot in some of the worst offenses in franchise history. Listen to this and tell me if you don't get mad. McLaurin has dominated since he got here. 460 receptions, 6,379 yards, 38 touchdowns in 6 years. But those numbers don't tell the whole story. This man has played with Taylor Heinicke, with Carson Wentz, with Sam Howell, with quarterbacks many of you don't even remember. And yet he's consistently produced. He's started every game for the last 4 seasons. Every single one. 0 significant injuries, 0 public drama, 0 complaints. On and off the field, he's been everything we expect from a franchise star. He's been the captain, the veteran, the guy rookies look to for guidance. But here's the problem. And this is what has me furious. We're on July 14th. Training camp is about to start in 2 weeks, and we still don't have an extension. I ask you, what are they waiting for? For the market to keep rising? For another receiver to sign for even more money? For McLaurin to get so frustrated that he starts considering other options? Because let me tell you something. Every day that passes without closing this deal, the more expensive it's going to be. McLaurin and his representatives aren't sitting around waiting. They're watching these contracts. They're doing their calculations. They're preparing their case. And they have every right to ask for their due. Now, I know some fans will say, but it's a lot of money. And I respond, compared to what? Compared to losing the best receiver we've had in decades. Compared to starting from scratch at a position where we already have an established All-Pro. Look at the numbers again. McLaurin averaged 87. Receptions, 1,063 yards over the last 2 seasons. That's elite production. That's consistency. That's exactly what a young quarterback like Daniels needs. But here's what worries me more. Reports suggest McLaurin might skip training camp. Might skip training camp. Do you realize what that means? It means that our WR1, the most reliable receiver for Daniels, won't be developing chemistry during the most important practices of the year. Let's compare with our rivals again, because this makes me sick. The Cowboys paid CeeDee Lamb $136 million over 4 years. The Eagles have A.J. Brown locked down with $100 million over 4 years. The Dolphins paid Tyreek Hill $120 million over 4 years. Even the Giants paid their receivers. And us? What exactly are we waiting for? Waiting for McLaurin to lower his expectations. Waiting for the market to collapse. Waiting for a miracle. Here are the facts. McLaurin is going to turn 30 in September. This is probably his last big contract. The timing is perfect for him to push for the most money possible. And with Wilson setting the new floor at $32.5 million, McLaurin has every right to ask for something similar or more. But let me tell you something that many aren't considering. McLaurin isn't just a receiver. He's a leader. He's the guy who kept this franchise together during its toughest years. He's the guy who never publicly complained, who always showed up, who always produced. When Ron Rivera was experimenting with quarterbacks, McLaurin produced. When the offense was inconsistent, McLaurin produced. When there was drama in the organization, McLaurin kept his head down and worked. That kind of professionalism, that kind of character, that can't be replaced. And here's what has me most worried. If McLaurin leaves, what message does that send to other free agents? What message does it send to Daniels? What message does it send to the fans who have been through everything with this franchise? The math is simple. McLaurin is invaluable to this offense. He's Daniels' trusted receiver. He's the veteran who can guide young guys like McAffrey. He's the piece that holds it all together. He's the guy who can make the tough catches, who can win in one-on-one coverage, who can be clutch on third down. But here's my biggest concern. Other teams are watching. If McLaurin hits free agency, if there's no extension, teams like the Chiefs, like the Bills, like the Ravens, teams that are one piece away from a championship will be calling. And we will be left wondering what could have been. The Commanders need to understand something. This isn't the time for games. This isn't the time for penny pinching. This is the time to secure your franchise player, to show commitment, to build around the pieces you already have established. Pay the man now before it costs even more. Because I guarantee you that in 6 months, $32.5 million will seem like a bargain compared to what replacing Terry McLaurin will cost. Now I ask you, Commanders fans, do you think McCaffrey will be the breakout star nobody expects? Do you trust Connolly to protect Daniels from day one? And what do you think about McLaurin's situation? Should the Commanders pay whatever it takes to keep him? These are the questions that will define our season, and I want to know what you think. Leave your comments below because this community we're building is more than just a channel. It's a family that lives and breathes Burgundy and Gold. If this analysis served you, if you learned something new, if you feel no one else is giving you this perspective, then it's time to officially become part of this family. Hit that subscription button because every day I'm going to bring you the deepest, most passionate, and most real analysis about our Washington Commanders. And remember, hail to the Redskins!